At a recent Evansville City Council meeting, the Evansville Police Department requested a routine funding transfer to pay for gear and training supplies for new recruits. Deputy Chief Stephanie Cox told council members that officers are leaving for unexpected reasons, and she says that it has been difficult to recruit. We've invited EPD Chief Billy BOLIN to talk to us more about all this, and we have him with us right now. Thank you so much, Chief. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. I understand that you're needing to hire over 24 officers this year, and that's 10% of the sworn officers on the force, as I understand. Is that more than a typical year? And is, why so many? Is this all retirement? What's causing this?
It is a lot more. We hired 14 earlier this year, and as we sit today, we have 18 openings again already. So first, anybody out here listening, we'd love to have you apply. But I think a lot of it does go to the national narrative that's going on about law enforcement. It's not a great time for people to want to go into this profession. When they watch the national news, they see the latest stories. And unfortunately, the actions of a few are painting all of us in a very bad light. And I think people that get their 20 on are retiring as soon as they can. We've got officers that are doing this for a short period of time and saying, you know what, I just don't think this is for me. I'm leaving. And I think the problem we're seeing, and it should be scary to our public, is there's officers that are very good, that do a great job, that I personally know as really good people, that are just saying, you know what, I'm afraid I'm going to do the right thing out here, and the court of public opinion is going to try me, and they don't want to risk it, and they're scared for their personal lives and their well-being, and they're leaving. And I understand it. I'd be lying if I say I don't wake up at days and think, is it time for me to do something else? It is a scary time to be a law enforcement officer in this country.
When you say that your officers are scared for their lives, talk to me about that. I know Deputy Chief Cox said that it is crazy hard to recruit right now. What are you seeing in Evansville? When you say they're afraid for their lives right now, what are you seeing in Evansville that's making that happen?
And I'm not talking about like a bullet. I'm talking about losing everything they've worked for, their financial well-being, losing their career.
Are you talking about qualified immunity? Do you mean qualified immunity? Are you talking about that reasoning?
That's part of it. I mean, we still have qualified immunity, so we haven't lost qualified immunity. But in the court of public opinion, you see what happened in Columbus, Ohio, for example. You got two girls fighting each other. One of them pulls a knife. She's going after another girl with it. A police officer does exactly as he's been trained to do, and as departments all over the country are training. And in my opinion, he deserves a merit award. And there is people all over this country, including very popular people, screaming that he should be going to prison or he should lose his job. And that is very concerning to officers. And as the leader of an agency, it's very concerning to me.
Right. Well, let me dig into that for a second here, because I don't want to. I want to get both sides out here. Obviously, that's very difficult for an officer in that kind of a situation. Tell me, in having to react in a split second like that, when you have people scrutinizing you, if you second guess, how does that affect how an officer responds?
I think we have to look at everything we do. And as a law enforcement administrator, we review all of our use of force. We go over that. So you're absolutely going to be questioned at times, and we get that. I think the problem we're seeing is, I think we have 50-something million runs in the United States a year involving law enforcement. And you have about 1,000 deaths at the hand of law enforcement. And that sounds bad, but when you think about what we do, we're responding to all these bad encounters, people with guns, people assaulting people. The overwhelming majority of those 1,000 are completely justified. There are people shooting at us. There are people trying to get away, ramming people with a car, all kinds of different things. You typically will have in the 10 to 20 range of those deaths that are questionable. And I've been very open that police make mistakes. We do. But when you look at the vast number of officers in our country and the vast number of runs, 50-something million runs versus 10 that are questionable, and that's what they're holding all of us to and saying we're horrible, we're racist, we're out killing people, we're trigger happy. And on the flip side, and I don't mean this critical at all, I love my doctors, nurses. I'm very supportive of that profession, so I don't say this in a critical way. But depending on what study you look at, there's 250,000 to 400,000 deaths every year due to medical malpractice. And we don't hear people screaming about our medical profession. but we do have everybody screaming at law enforcement, and the numbers are skewed. It doesn't represent what we do as a profession. And by and large, we're good people that are trying to help people and make the world a better place. And it's very hard to constantly hear how bad we are and to see people wanting to quit and give up a career they've worked really hard for. And I see people on social media, well, if that's what they think, they don't need to be doing it anyway. Well, I know that there's very good officers and good people that are leaving this profession because of what's going on, and it's sad and it's scary, and the public needs to look at it and say, we need to stand up and not lose good people for this. Well,
no, we don't want to lose good people, but as we have seen around the country, there are some that are not good people. Talking about, Derek Chauvin, who was convicted of misconduct. Beyond that, actually, manslaughter and murder. But you said yourself that you do need to be scrutinized. So that's one thing many of the community need to see. And with the cell phone usage now, you're seeing so much more than we've seen in the past. So
yes.
How do we find a dialogue, or how do we find a way to get through this so we are able to keep and recruit people to be good officers and keep them on our force, but yet do not have nonviolent situations getting out of hand and delving into misconduct?
I think we already have the narrative and the exchange, and I think policing across the country, not just here in Evansville, does a lot of outreach and a lot of community initiatives, but it's not going to change until the national media quits promoting this as the way it is every day. You'll have the Derek Chauvin thing, for example. That's not what is happening all over the country in every encounter across the world. But to a lot of people in our communities, that's what they believe because that's what they're watching on the national news. And as I said a minute ago, you get 50-something million police encounters in a year, and that represents a very small portion of them, but that's what we're being viewed at, is through that lens, like we're doing that every day, and we're simply not. And it's heart-wrenching to see our officers going through what they're going through. When we're wrong, we need to be held accountable. He needed to be held accountable. He was wrong. I don't know of a single police officer that says he wasn't wrong. But that does not represent all of us and what we do day in and day out.
So what do you think when you see these cell phone videos come forward? I mean, it seems like every week there is another instance where a bystander has a cell phone of an instance that is frustrating a community that feels that misconduct or too much force or it's not policing as it should be.
I think the overwhelming majority of the time, there's another side to that cell phone footage, and most of the time it shows we're right. I think you would agree here locally, we've had numerous ones of those pop up. And then when we release our body cam video, there's a whole nother side to the story. And the overwhelming, or not the overwhelming, on every one of these cases, even when the police officers are wrong, there's conflict and there's people not listening to the directions they're being given. There's people that are out of control. If people would be taught or would follow just simple commands of law enforcement and understand that the way it's built in the United States of America is you have your day in court. If the police officer's wrong, you get an attorney, you go to court, you fight your battle there. Police officers lose in court every day of the year. But when you're in a scene and it's chaotic and you're wanting to fight or buck up with that officer, it becomes intense. We're human. We have fear. We have adrenaline. There's all kinds of factors that go into it. And there's going to be mistakes that are made when you have that chaotic scene. And that's what I would ask the public to remember. I'm not saying we're not wrong. I'm not saying we don't make mistakes. But during those confrontational moments, mistakes are going to happen. So when I have people ask, well, what do I tell my son? I'm scared for him. It's what I was taught as a kid. It's what I teach my boys. I've got 3 boys. If you get pulled over by the police, you keep your hands on the steering wheel. You, I was getting a call. I'm sorry. You follow what the officers are telling you to do, and there shouldn't be a problem. And my kids have never had an issue, and I know we're white, but I've got plenty of black friends that teach their kids the same thing, and they've had the same encounters. You can control how that encounter goes by just following the simple commands of what the officer's asking.
Okay, I do understand what you're saying. But just for the record, I know that there's other folks in the community, minorities in the community that say that's not their experience. And one more, we are running a little bit out of time, and I don't want to cut this short, but I do want to say this too. It seems to be a prominent issue in Evansville that there is a portion of our community that has some distrust still. You know, whenever there are incidents, victims and witnesses don't readily come forward. How are you working to solve that problem, and how are you working toward more trust in that community?
Well, and I think a lot of that, by saying it's just not, and there is a lack of trust, I agree with you, but the people not coming forward, it's not just trust. A lot of that is fear, and it's very rightfully so. If you live in a community where you know somebody shot somebody and you're afraid that if you come forward they may shoot you, that's very understandable. I get that, and we try to do as much as we can to protect people's identity, but a lot of times it's going to come out in court. The accused have a right to know that. So it is tough, but building trust is just building relationships, and it's one by one, as much as we can do. The community outreach, building relationships, getting out in the community, show them we're part of that community is what we have to do. But we're not the enemies. We're part of you. We want a safe community, and we want our kids to grow up in a safe community. Hopefully that's what all of us are wanting.
Now, we are pretty much at the end here, so I do want to give you, I know you're needing recruits. What do people do if, first of all, tell folks why you need good police officers, and number two, what do they do? What's that first step in going onto the force? What do they need to do?
EWISVLLePolice.com. You can go to our website. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Come down to the police department, get an application. But the one thing I say to people all the time is, if you don't trust us or you are unhappy with your policing, come be a part of the solution. Give us a shot. Come do this job. Come do this career. And maybe you can make an impact and change it for future generations.
Okay. Chief Billy BOLIN, we really appreciate you taking the time today and talking to us about this sensitive issue. We appreciate it. Thank you.